Start recording. Okay, welcome to today's workshop in furniture design for Rhino. So this is in collaboration. Do you want to just do a brief introduction?
Yeah, so we're iDesign and we're running a competition. I think either the brief's been released or it's going to be released later today. We're doing a competition and we thought this workshop would be great. You guys to learn a bit of skills, something to support your submission, and yeah, hope you guys enjoy it.
Great, thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to be looking at Rhino and how we can use Rhino for furniture design. So let me just introduce myself. My name is Joe Cook. I'm one of the lecturers in architectural digital design. One of my roles here is to teach workshops. And so in collaboration with what's the name of this? iDesign, with iDesign, which is it stands for interior design. So in collaboration with iDesign, we're going to run a workshop on furniture design in Rhino. So what gives me the credentials to teach this workshop? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about my own background. I have a background in architecture. I studied architecture. I did my undergrad in architecture. I did a master's degree in architecture in the UK. After that time, I then started to teach Rhino professionally and consulted for a lot of different design companies. And one design company that I actually consulted for was a company called iSomi, which was a furniture design company. And I'll show you what the kind of work that we used to do there. So what we did at iSomi is, if I just show you this, it involved a lot of Rhino work, and we did everything in Rhino. So we did anything from reception desks, like the ones you see on here, and this was all done in Rhino. And so they brought me into the company initially to consult as a designer, to consult for Rhino and teach them how to use Rhino. And eventually they were manufacturing out in Germany and they wanted to bring their manufacturing in-house into the UK. So they needed somebody to really help them to understand how they could manufacture a lot of these pieces. So the role that I took there is they were looking for somebody who was a professional in Rhino and who was able to take their design work that they had and how they could then manufacture it here in the UK using different manufacturing techniques. And so that was my role there. It was to take all of the designs that they had and any new designs, model them in Rhino and all of their ranges, because all of the ranges is modular. So everything was modular. So I had to create every single modular component in such a way that it could then be reconstructed however we wanted. And we did it in CAD, we did it in BIM, and also for manufacturing. So I worked there for a couple of years where I was, working on different projects with them, lots of these different interior projects, but mainly the furniture manufacturing was what we did there. And so that kind of gave me quite a deep understanding of furniture design and how we can design interiors and how we can design furniture, and it's all done in Rhino. So I'm going to teach you some of the techniques that I would use when I was working at iSomi today of how we can model different furniture. And I'm going to start with some basic understanding of Rhino, just so you've got an idea of how to use Rhino. But I'll also teach you how we can use this in such a way. I'm just going to move this guy down here. I'm going to teach you how we can use some of the different tools in Rhino to be able to make different pieces of furniture. So one of the things that I'm going to show you is how we can use curves to create furniture. I'm going to teach how we can use surfaces to create furniture. I'm going to teach you how we can use solids to create furniture. And I'm going to teach you how we can use sub-D to create furniture as well. A little bonus tip that I'm going to give you is how we can use curve from object to also create furniture. Now that might not mean a lot to you right now, but it will do by the end of our workshop. You'll have an understanding of what that means. We'll create some parametric sort of stuff, things that look parametric, a lot of like the waffle structures and those types of designs is something that we can show you. Okay, so just a quick overview of Rhino. How many people have used Rhino before? By show of hands. Yeah? You not used it before? Years ago? Have you ever used Rhino before? Have you used Rhino before? Okay. So it's going to be a learning curve for some people. I do have a workshop online, which was an introduction to rhinoceros, and I would recommend that you watch that prior to delving deeper into Rhino. I recommend that you watch that workshop. I'm not going to be doing this as an introduction to Rhino because the expectation is that you have some understanding, but I'll teach it in such a way that you can follow along anyway. Okay? So if we'll just do step-by-step tutorials. So we're going to start off today with a curve. So believe it or not, all of this here, this chair, was made using just curves. So what are curves? When we talk about curves in Rhino, we're talking about lines or a point from A to B. So from this side to this side. So 2 points that connect to one another, we call those curves in Rhino. And up here along the menu bar, we have the different modeling tools that we can use and how we can create geometry. In my Rhino, introduction to Rhino, I teach people, there's 3 different ways that we can do anything in Rhino. The first way is we can type on the toolbar and we can type a command, okay? And if we want to know what commands that we have, if I type just the letters in the alphabet, I can see there are all my A commands, okay? These are all my B commands, and so on and so forth. So I can type commands. The second way that I can work with Rhino is using the menu bar along the top. So I've got these drop downs here, and I can use these menu bars along the top. And just very quickly, if I just compartmentalize them for you, this is where we create geometry. We can create curves here, we can create surfaces here, we can create sub-Ds here, and we can create solids here. Okay? So that's those 4 menu bars here. After that, we've got drafting, so we can add, text, dimensions to our drawing. And then we have transform, which is another major tool that we use. Okay? So ask yourself this question: am I creating something or am I editing something? If I'm creating something from scratch, I'm going to need to use my creation tools. If I'm editing or modifying something, I can use my transform or edit tools. Okay? So that's just a very quick overview. We're going to start with a curve, a simple curve, a simple line. And from that line, we're going to create this chair that you see here, just from one line. And I'm going to teach you how we can do that. Say that again, sorry? What template? So I'm just using millimeters today because we're working on a smaller scale. When I'm working architecturally, often I'll use meters. When I'm starting out with something like furniture, I'll often use millimeters. Why do you think I use millimeters rather than meters? Why do you think I do that? Precision? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And also it's in relation to the scale that we're working at. So everything that we do is in relation to human scale. So whenever I'm choosing which file template to use in Rhino, I'll often consider what is the human scale that I'm working at. So if I'm working at a furniture scale, often I will work in millimeters because that's the nominal dimension that's used. If I'm working on an urban plan, I'll often use meters because in terms of the human scale, we've just scaled up. So I want to work with a higher scale. Okay, so I'll work with small objects, millimeters is what I'm going to be working with. Okay, and in order to do that, all we need to do is go File, New, or Open, and you can do small objects, and we're going to do millimeters wherever it is there. Small objects, millimeters. Okay, that's the one we're going to do. So once you've opened that up, we should have a file that looks like this, and this is our grid system. So at the bottom, we can turn ortho on and off, and what that does is it allows us to constrain in 90-degree increments. But for the purposes of today's workshop, I'm just going to open up the file that I've already created, the furniture design file, because I want to just show you how we can do this. Okay, so what we have here is a single curve. What I want you to do is just draw this curve out. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go to Curve, Line, and I want you to draw a single line. Okay? And I want you to click one place. I want you to type 400 and press enter and then click again. Are you following? Are you going to join us? Are you going to do it with us?
I'm actually not here for the workshop itself. I'm here to see how you actually the workshop. I'm about to do some kind of a similar workshop myself.
Okay.
I'm not interested in getting involved. I'm interested in seeing how you are.
You want to see me?
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's all right.
That's okay. Are you a student here? PhD student? Yeah, perfect. Of course. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's absolutely fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by just drawing a single line. 400 millimeters is a typical size that we use when we're using chairs and so on. So for example, the height of a chair typically will be around about 400. The depth and width of a chair will be approximately anything from 400 to 500 millimeters. So that's just something to consider. So we're just going to start off with a single curve that's 400. Okay? So has everybody done that? Yeah? Perfect. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to use some of our transform tools to be able to copy, rotate the curve that we've created. And then we're going to be able to build up the framework of our chair. So, one quick tip that I have for you. As I'm dragging in Rhino, if I turn my gumball on down here, this is gumball. And the way that gumball works is we can move our objects using the gumball. We can also rotate using the gumball, and we can also scale using the gumball. Okay? So the gumball is a really useful tool, especially when it comes to sort of precision modeling. And what I would like you to do is just select that. And I'm going to give you a little tip. As we start to drag out in any direction, if we hit Alt one time, so Alt one time, you'll see a plus icon appear. And that means that we're copying out a line or a curve. Okay? So we're going to copy out a curve, and then we have a second curve. Okay? Everyone been able to do that? So the next thing that we're going to do once we've got that line is I'm going to rotate it. And the way that I'm going to do that is I can use this, again, the gumball, I can use the rotation, which is the blue line here. So anything that has like a curve, like an arc, that's our rotation tool. So this rotates in the z-axis. This one here, the green one, that will rotate in the y-axis. And then the red one will rotate in the x-axis. I want to actually rotate in the z-axis. Now, if I start to rotate, it will snap to 90-degree increments. The reason that that's happening is because I have ortho turned on. If I turn ortho off, it will not snap. If I turn ortho on, it will snap at 90-degree increments, which is fine, because I want to snap it just 90 degrees, just that way. Okay? And now what I can do is I can use the move command. And again, I'll show you the different ways we can do that. We can either type move here. I can go up here to transform, and I can click move here. Because this time with the move command, I want to move from a specific point. Because I want to move this point here to this point here. So what I need to do is I need to make sure on the left-hand side over here, we have O snap, which means object snap. And we need to make sure that our endpoint's turned on. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our transform command, and we're going to click move. And we're going to select where we want to move from, the object we want to move. And it's going to be this guy here. I'm going to snap to the end of that object, and we're going to move it to the end of this object. Okay? So we can do the same thing again, but we're going to do copy this time. So I can either type copy. So that's one way I can do things in Rhino. Or I can use the command line up here, and I can go to copy. And I can click copy. Okay? And I'm going to copy this guy here. And I'm going to select it. And whatever the command line tells me to do, if I just follow what the command line says, I will never go wrong in Rhino. So just do what the command line says. So it's saying, select the objects that you want to copy. So I'm going to select the objects that I want to copy, and it says press enter when done. Another little tip for those of you that have been to my workshops before, what's the fastest way to hit enter in Rhino? Right click your mouse button, okay? So this is a really useful tip. So rather than hitting enter, one way that we can be more efficient in modeling in Rhino is just finding out the quickest, most efficient way of doing things. The quickest, most efficient way of hitting enter is just tapping your right mouse button one time, and that will behave like enter. Okay? So now I can just select this guy at the end because I'm copying, and I can copy it across. Okay? Perfect. Is everybody happy with that? Has everyone got a U shape now? Amazing. Great. So we're just going to follow a similar logic again, but this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this curve here and this curve here, and this time I'm going to type isolate on my command line. I'm going to type isolate, and what isolate does, it turns everything else off and just isolates that one object that I'm working on. Then that way, if I go in the right view, for example, I know that the lines that are in my model are no longer any of the other lines because I've just isolated those two lines. Okay? And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rotate these lines. So I'm going to select them all first, dragging a box over. And one other little tip is if I drag a box from right to left and it goes blue, it'll only select what's inside the box. If I drag a box from right to left and it has this dashed line around it, it will select whatever the box is touching. So it doesn't need to be inside, it's just whatever it's touching. So drag a box over, and now I've selected all of my lines. So if I go in the right view, drag a box over all my lines, I'm going to now type rotate, or I can go up here to transform, I can click on rotate. And on the command line, it's going to ask if I want to do a copy. I do want to do a copy because I want to keep my original geometry, but I want to then rotate it upwards so that I now do a copy of the rotation. So I'm going to go to rotation, and I'm going to choose this point here as the center of my rotation, and then I can just rotate up again because my O snap's on. It's going to do it at 90-degree increments, and it's going to do that. I'm going to make sure that my copy was selected to yes. Sorry. And now, if I hit enter, you'll see that I've selected these guys. Okay? If I type unisolate, it will unisolate my model. So now I've got those lines. Okay? Do you want me to repeat that for anybody? Yeah? So the first step that I did, select these two lines here, type isolate. So I've only got those two lines. Then I'm going to go in the right view. I'm going to drag a box over those two lines. I'm going to type rotate, and I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to choose copy and set that as yes. I want to make sure it copies. And then I'm going to select the corner here. I need to make sure the end's turned on. And I'm just going to rotate these guys 90 degrees and then hit my right mouse button to hit enter. And once I've entered, then I've created that. Were you able to do it? How am I clicking what, sorry? How am I selecting multiple lines? So drag a box over them, and if they're contained inside them, you can do it that way. Another way we can select multiple lines is if we can select one, hold shift, and then select the other one. Okay? If we hold control, we can deselect. So shift to add to selection, control removes from selection. Okay? Then I'm going to go into the right view. I'm going to go to transform, rotate. I'm going to rotate from that corner there. I'm going to rotate upwards. Okay. And then I'm going to unisolate. And now we have this. Okay. Now I'm going to take these two curves again, select them both by holding shift. I'm going to type copy. I'm going to copy from the bottom, and I'm going to copy up to the top. Okay? Now I'm going to select the two curves at the front. I'm going to type copy. I'm going to press enter, I'm going to select from this corner here, and I'm going to move up to that corner there. And then to finish everything off, I just need to draw a line. So I can go to curve, line, single line, and I can select that end and that end. And now I've created a profile of my chair. Okay? Everybody okay with that? I'll just make these a little bit larger as well. So we've created what looks like the profile of a chair. Okay? Has everybody gotten to this point? Has anybody not gotten to this point? You're almost there? Okay, so there's a couple of commands that we're using. We're only using copy, we're using move, and we're using rotate. They're the 3 commands that we've been using so far. And if we make sure that our object snaps are turned on, we'll object snap. And if we make sure that we do, when we're rotating, that we turn the copy on in the menu bar, then in the command bar, then we know that we're rotating a copy. Everybody okay with this so far? Wonderful. Okay, so there's a couple of things that we can do once we've done this. So we can now take these curves that we have and we can join them together. Because right now they're all individual curves. So if I select them all and type join, what it's going to do is it's going to join all of those lines together. So now it's one polycurve. What's a polycurve? What is a polycurve? Multiple lines. So it's not just one curve, it's multiple curves that are joined together. So we call it a polycurve. It's a single curve, but there's multiple curves that are joined together. Okay? So what we can do now is we can use a command called fillet corners. And the way that the fillet corners works is it's going to put a slight radius on every single corner for us at a height or a radius that we specify. So what we need to do is type fillet corners and press enter. And it says select the polycurve to fillet. So I'm going to select my polycurve. And it says press enter when done. I'm going to press enter. And then I'm going to specify the distance as 100. And then hit enter. And you'll see it'll do a really nice, beautiful curve on all of the corners. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to draw another line. And we're just going to draw it from one side. And then you'll see that there's this command called Smart Track down here. Make sure that's turned on. And what it'll do is it drags like an invisible line that becomes a constraint for us to use. So I'm just going to go to the end of one of my radiuses. And I'm just going to draw a line across. And I'm going to hit enter. So in order to repeat the last command, another little tip is if I hit enter, it always repeats my last command. So rather than having to type it in again, because I know I'm doing the same command again, if I hit enter, it will repeat my last command. So what's the quick way to hit enter in Rhino? Right click. So let's just right click our mouse button and we've got start polyline again. So now I can go to the end of the other radius, for example, and I can go down, drag, and I can drag across to the other side. And I can do the same again on the back. Right click, repeats my last command. I can go to the end of this profile, and then I can drag across. I can go to here, to the end of the radius, drag across. Okay? 100. I just did it 100 millimeters. Okay, so I'm going to show you another little tip now. Is in order for me to create lines between those lines, right now I have no reference point on here, so I don't know. So I know where the midpoint is, so I could use the midpoint and I can go to there. But let's say I wanted more curves. Let's say I wanted 3 instead of just 1. There's a way that I can put curves between curves. And that's an easy way to remember what this command is called. If it's curves between curves, we use the command called tween. It's like in between, okay? Tween. So we're going to use the tween command And what we can do is we can then add curves. And what it does is it takes curves on one side and the other side, and it adds a number of curves in between. So if I type tween curves, press enter, I can select this curve at the top, and I need to select it to one end. I need to make sure that the second one that I select is also to the same end, and then I can specify the number that I want. If I wanted 10, it will put 10 in there. If I wanted 5, it'll put 5 in there. If I want 3, it'll put 3 in there. Okay? So I'm going to use the tween command to put those lines in. Go ahead.
Can I ask what's the difference between this one and the array linear?
So array linear, what it does is it takes, so if I would do an array linear, what it's going to do, it's just going to do a perfect repetition of all of these, let's say I'm going to do it in the, let me just do it in the X. So array, if I type array, and then if I do 10 in the X, 1 in the Y, 1 in the Z, and I select, that's going to do an array, okay? So I could do that, which is fine, okay? The way that a tween works, I could have an object of 2 separate shapes, and it will find the perfect mathematical distance between each of them, like so, okay? So it takes one curve, second curve, and then puts every curve in between. So we can even have 2 curves that are 2 different shapes, and it will find the perfect. This is how we can do sort of parametric design. Okay? So there's an expression in the that we use sometimes that there's 100 ways to skin a cat. And there's lots of different ways you can do stuff in Rhino. It's just about finding the most efficient ways and the fastest ways to do things. That's the main thing. So does that answer your question about the difference between the array and tween? So let's do tween again for the bottom curves, just here. And again, we can do 2, or if we want to do 2, we can do 2 there. And now we have these curves. So what I want to do now is I want to make sure that these curves, because in furniture design and in chair design, we usually have some kind of ergonomic design. Does everyone know what ergonomics is? What is ergonomic design? Yeah, it fits the form of the body. So we want it to have some slight curvature. So if I want to add that curvature, I can manipulate my curves. So the way that I would do that is right now, if I look at these curves, if I go here, you see on this left-hand side, it's control points on. I can turn the control points on. And over here, I can do control points on, and it will turn my control points on of that curve. Now I can see right now that there is only 2 control points on this curve. So I need another control point in the center in order for us to use that control point to start to drag it down to add a little bit of curvature. So what I would need to do is rebuild these curves with 3 points, because right now they only have 2. And the way I do that is I type rebuild, and I'm going to select the curves that I want to rebuild. So I'm going to select all of these inner curves, and I'm going to change from 2 to 3 points, and I'm going to hit OK. Okay? So now what I can do is I can select those points in the center, and I can start to push them down a little bit. And the same again at the back. I can select the points in the center, and using my gumball, I can just start to push them back a little bit. Okay? So now I've started to create some curvature on that profile. Now I have my chair. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a command called pipe. And what that's going to do, it's going to put a pipe around all of these curves. So I can type pipe. And if I just do the pipe radius as 5, just for now, you'll see that that's now created a chair for us, as if it was like fabricated out of a steel pipe or some kind of pipe work. Okay? So select all of the lines, type pipe. I just did 5 millimeters as the radius, and you should have a pipe around your curves. Has everyone been able to do this? Yeah, no problem. So what I'll do, if I just go back for a second, I'm just going to select my curves in the center. Okay, so do that for me now. Select them. Then I'm going to type rebuild. Okay, rebuild. And I'm going to hit enter. And I'm going to change my point count from 2 to 3. So type 3 and then hit OK. And now I need to turn my control points on, which I can just do over here on the left-hand side. But you need to make sure that those curves were selected. As your control points come on. So select the curves first, select them, and then control points on. Yeah. Make sure that the rebuild works. A second. So I need to make sure I hit enter when I do the rebuild. Click OK. Hit my control points on. Yeah. And then I can select all of these curves in the center, and I can just use my gumball to just drag them down a little bit. And I can select all the center ones at the back, and I can use my gumball to just drag them back a little bit. Then I can select all of my curves, and I can type pipe, and I can do a 5 millimeter radius, and then we end up with a pipe like this. And if I just turn on like Arctic mode for a second, or rendered mode, you can start to see the shape of this object appearing. Okay? Everybody okay? Has everyone got a chair? Yes, beautiful. Yeah, nice. Wonderful. Just kidding. You okay? Yeah, so just choose the ones in the center. So just drag a box over these guys here. Just drag a box over these guys. So from right to left. So when I say a box, just drag a box like this. And then just push it back. Okay. And then move around. Drag a box. Push down. Yeah. And now select them all and hit pipe. Okay?
Very good. That was awesome. Thank you. Probably in the next few weeks, I'm going to do a workshop with Unreal Engine. Yeah. And I was wondering how
Are you with
future process.
Hamid?
Yes.
Yeah, amazing. I've not met you. I'm Joe.
Joe.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Daniel.
Yeah, we'll get to know each other a lot
Of
more.
course.
So you're an Unreal Engine expert?
Yes. Not an expert. Yeah. I know.
Perfect. Yeah. That'd be amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have any questions, just ask.
Joe what?
Joe Cook.
Joe Cook. All right. Yeah.
Nice and easy.
I look forward to this one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
no worries, man. You're welcome anytime. Like,
Cheers.
just ask, and I'll happily help. You okay? Hey, look, you've done your first Rhino model. This is great. Keep going. You're doing good. Yes. Okay, that's all right. Okay, is everybody, you managed to do it? Perfect. Okay, so primarily we used curves to create this model. And it was only at the very last stage that we started to create mass around our curves. So we used the curves and we were able to create some profiles. So hopefully you've got an idea of how to do this. So if you just type fillet corners, it's the corners that we want.
Okay.
Hit enter, and then add the old. And then we need to make sure we're doing them the right size. And then let's do 100. There you go. Let's just get rid of any of these guys that we don't need. I don't know what's happened there, but I think it's got a few
Extras.
extras, yeah. But we've recorded the session anyway, so if you're struggling to, you can go back over it, but hopefully you've got a good idea of, some of the steps that we took. Okay? Yes. So, how can you use this for yourself? So, can you see how you might be able to use this for yourself, for your interior design? So, what other furniture could we construct doing this? Shower head, yeah, you could. Fixtures, you could do, tables, you could do bed frames. Yeah, so we could create our profile curve of bed frame and then pipe, and we've got a bed frame. So there's lots of different ways that you could use this tool. Okay?
What command did you use to add a control point?
So I did rebuild. Okay, I typed rebuild, and I just rebuilt the curve, and now we have this. Okay? So just for everybody's benefit, this session is recorded. So if you feel like you didn't manage to quite finish that, or you want to just go over it so you understand it more, please don't hesitate to go back through the recording and you can have a look, because I'm conscientious of moving on to the next section, and then you can work through it at your own pace. Okay, so the next objects that we have is surface. And I'm just going to very quickly show you how we can use surfaces in a similar way to the way that we made our curve. But I'm just going to do this super fast. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to create a surface, and I'm just going to go to surface here at the top. I'm going to go to plane. I'm going to go to corner. And what I'm going to do is type 400 as one of my lengths. And then the second length, I'm going to do 600. Oh, so it's 400, enter, 600, enter. So for everybody's benefit, I just went to surface, plane, corner to corner. I clicked in my viewport, and I typed 400, I hit enter, and I typed 600, and I hit enter. And then I have a single surface or a single plane. Okay, so similar to my last commands, what I can do here is there's a couple of different ways that I could do this. I could use the copy, rotate, and so on to try and rotate this around, which is one thing I could do. Another thing that I could do is if I go to sub-D tools and turn the edge on, if I start dragging this out here, oops, let's go here. I'll go to sub-D tools, go to edge. If I hit shift, so let me just make sure I'm getting it right. Yeah, sorry. If I hit control, so if I go to sub-D tools here, and I just make sure that my edges are selectable, and it's this command here, if you look at my screen, it's just the one where it says selection filters edges, it's just there. Or the other place to find it is if I go down here on the left-hand side, next to my O-snap, there's a filter icon you'll see there. I can click on that filter icon, and if I just right-click on curves and edges, it will turn on my curves and edges and turn everything else off. Okay? So I can select that edge, and if I hit control, as I'm dragging, it will drag out another face in the direction of the gumball. So, and control shift works as well? Yeah, perfect. So control shift, you say?
Yeah. Because without you don't need the filter if you just press it.
Perfect. So if you use control shift, you don't even need the filter. So once you've dragged that out, we could just drag it out, and then we could drag backwards, and we could drag up again, and we can create like any profile that we want. So just create a chair shape of any profile that you want, just like so. And this is how we can start to manipulate just very simple surfaces into a shape. I could do the same thing with, like, let's say I had like some kind of like cantilevering desk. I could do the same thing. I could drag this out, and now I've got like some kind of like cantilevering desk, that I also could use. So there's lots of different ways you could use this. But I'm just going to show you a really simple way. So I'm just going to drag out like a chair shape. Okay? So once I've done that, I can then start to manipulate this surface and again start to add some thickness to it and solidify it to give it a little bit more thickness. Now one of the things that I might want to do is just select this edge and move it. You can begin to move some of these objects around. If you're not happy with it, you can begin to move some of the objects around if you want them to have a little bit of a cantilever. If you want to have them, not a cantilever. If you want to have a slight slope, you can do. But just for the purpose of this, I'm just going to very quickly show you. I'm going to use a command called fillet edge this time. So fillet edge, and I'm just going to do my radius at 100. And then I can select the edge. So I need to make sure that my selection filter is no longer disabled. So if I go up here on my sub D tools, and you see this big red stop sign over the filter, I can click on that, and it will bring all of my filter command back. So I can just select that. And now what I can do is I can select the edges that I want to filter. Before I do that though, I need to make sure that these edges are joined. So let's select all of them and type join. And now they're joined into a polysurface. What's a polysurface? Multiple surfaces that are joined together. I know it sounds repetitive and you're going to sort of go, oh yeah, why are you asking me these stupid questions? They're not stupid to people that are learning Rhino, because it's like, all right, I'm really starting to ingrain this into my brain. So polysurface is more than one surface that's joined together. So before we can do our fillet, we would need to join it together. So if I type fillet edge now and do my next radius at 100, if I type 100 and press enter, I can select these edges here and I can radius this guy so that it has a radius. Okay? So let's say I want to add some thickness to this now. I can type offset surf SRF, press enter, and then depending on the thickness that I want, let's say it was 50, let's say it was something that was like injection molded plastic, I could then use this. Or if it was sheet plastic that was thermal formed, which is probably the way that this would be done, is I can then add thickness to it, and I just added some thickness to that. So we have a shape that looks something like this. Say that again, sorry. Offset SRF, offset surface. So it's offset SRF. So we did fillet edge, 100. And then we can do that. So this is how we can work with surfaces. Okay? So the next technique that I'm going to show you, so on this model, let's say it's really important the way that we do commands, because let's say that I wanted to put a fillet on these edges now. I can do that, but I needed to offset my surface first before I could fillet the edges. So if I wanted to fillet those edges now, what I can do is I can type fillet edge, and I can select these back edges here, for example, and I press enter and it will fillet those back edges. If I wanted to do these top edges, again, fillet edge, select the edges, 100, and now I've got something that looks like this. So I just use fillet edge. Offset, I just did 5. And it'll just it's a sheet material. Or you could do 10 if you want it. So a nominal size is like maybe 18, because that's the sort of thickness that sheet materials come in. So you could do 18 if you wanted to. But yeah, just find and then if you wanted to fillet the edge, you can. So you can type fillet edge, and you can just select these back edges or the top edges, and then we can start to fillet those edges. So this is a really useful tip. In CGI, in architectural visualization, there are never, ever, ever sharp edges. We never have perfectly sharp edges. I want you to look at the desk in front of you. Okay? If we were modeling this desk, we would usually use a rectangle, but if you look at the desk in front of you, does it have a sharp edge? It doesn't have a really sharp edge. What would you say the radius is on this edge of this desk? So maybe 2, 3, 4 millimeters. So everything in reality has a slight curvature to it. Nothing that really has a really sharp edge unless it's like a knife or something that's designed to be super sharp. Even the computer screen in front of you, look at it, there is still a slight fillet on the edge. So learning how to fillet edges is really important for interior design. Okay? And that's going to be really important for you as you go forwards and as you're designing furniture, as you're designing interiors. Nothing has a perfectly sharp edge. So if you want to start to get realism in your models, realism in your CGIs, put just a slight fillet on edges. A lot of the rendering softwares like D5, for example, allows you to put an imaginary fillet on after the fact. So even if you've modeled it with a sharp edge, you can put it on in D5 when you put the material on. You can just put a slight radius on the edge, but you can also model it in there as well. So if we wanted to do that, what we would need to do is, if we type fillet edge, what I'm going to do this time is click on chain edges. And what that's going to do is it's going to do a chain all the way around my object. But I'm going to set this radius as like, let's say 4. It's at 100 right now, so make sure that it's set to 4. And then chain edges, and then select the edge. And then it'll just put a slight radius on the edges. And it's just makes it more realistic. Chain edges, select the outline, and then it'll make it more realistic. Okay? So that's how we do, or how we can use very simple surfaces. We can use surfaces in other ways as well, but I'm just showing you just really, really simple commands. So the chain edges was when I did fillet edge. So I would type fillet edge, and you see up here on my command line, if I click it, it's only going to select one edge. If I make sure that chain edges is selected first, then whenever it'll select the whole chain of edges. Yeah? Otherwise, it's going to select just one edge, and I want to select the whole chain. And then I can put my radius on it. You can also put chamfers on it. So one tool that I really like in my designs is I put chamfers on a lot of things. So you can do the same again. You type chamfer edge, and you might even do this a little bit bigger. Yeah, sure. So let's have a look. Could be, so you need to make sure that it has thickness first of all, because it looks like it's not got any thickness. So you need to offset the surface first. You cannot chamfer an edge on a flat surface. So you won't be able to chamfer or fillet a flat surface. So it needs to have thickness. It needs to be a solid in order for us to work with it. And so one tool that I do like to use, I love to put little chamfers on my stuff, because it's just a nice little design. You know, it just adds a little bit of something to your design work. Okay, if you want to visualize your model as well, what you can do is you can select it, and you can go to Analyze up here, and you can go to Surface, and I can go to Curvature Analysis, and you can see the curvature analysis of this. We can also go to Surface, Environment Map, and what that's going to do is it's going to put like a mirror effect on your model, so you can get an idea of the curvature and it'll give you an idea of how things are looking with you. So all I did is I go to Analyze, Surface, Environment Map, and then just select it and hit Enter, and it'll put this on. I can do the same also with my aluminium style design over here, so you can start to see the curvature of that object. Okay, so the next tool that I'm going to use is I'm going to show you how we can use just platonic, solid, geometric objects, and how as we start to combine them together, we can create different pieces of furniture. Okay? So, I've got this item over here. This item is just simply lots of cylinders, and it's 2 boxes that have been filleted. Okay? And then you end up with a chair that looks something like that. And the way that I do that, again, I can eyeball it. So a lot of my designing, sometimes I'll design with precision in mind, but I've gotten to a stage where I'll put a human into my models, and then I'll just model things at human scale with a person next to it. So it's not everything will be absolutely perfect precision, but it will look correct according to human scale. So one of the techniques that I do like to do is have a human in a model, for example, and then I can just literally start to just bring platonic shapes in, and I can just start pushing and pulling and manipulating them to like the size that I want. I can start dragging across and hit Alt, and I've got those guys. And then I can take my cylinder, for example. I can rotate that around in 90 degrees. I can stretch it out. I can go over here. And then it's just a case of, this is called kit bashing. I like to call it, this is a technique that we use called kit bashing, where you're just bashing parts together, but you've got an understanding of how they work. And we can create different objects as a result of that, just by pushing. And if I hit shift whilst I'm scaling, I can scale the whole object. So if I want to make it thinner, and then I can scale it that way. And then I can just move these guys in place. And as I'm dragging out, I can hit Alt. So I've got this next one. I can hit Alt again for the next one. I can hit Alt again for the next one. And this is just a fast way for me being able to model. Let's say I just want to go up with this guy to go to the back. And this is just a really fast and easy way that I can model just using. I just used very, very simple shapes. So I used box and a cylinder, and I've created an entire object. Let's say I wanted to add detail. Let's say this has little bolts in the corners. You know, I can just use this cylinder. I can move it into place. I can scale it down. I can hold shift as I'm scaling, and it will scale the whole object. You know, and you can just start to push and pull until, you know, you've got a basic shape that you're happy with. And then if I hold shift whilst I'm scaling, I can use my gumball just to do all of this. So as I'm dragging out, if I hit Alt, I can drag a copy. Then I can select both of them by hitting shift, hit Alt and drag a copy. And so this is just a really fast and efficient way of modeling, where I can just use very, very simple shapes. So everything in architecture, everything in furniture is just a culmination of very simple shapes. Okay? So if you look in front of you, look at your computer screen. What shape is that? It's a rectangle, but what 3D shape is that? What 3D shape is this? It's a box. It's just a box. But it's just a box that's been scaled in certain direction to look, to be, you know, something else. And that's essentially, if we just really understand that principle, we understand that everything derives typically from just platonic shapes. And as we start to combine those shapes together, we can create really interesting stuff. Another example might be, let's say I want to do a coffee table using that same technique. I'm going to take one of these cylinders, I'm going to drag it out, and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to rotate it around. I'm going to scale it. This time I'm going to scale it this way. I'm going to create like coffee table top. And then I'm going to drag this down. I'm going to do 2 because I want to do 2. And then I'm going to scale this guy, and then I'm going to scale it up. I'm going to push this through so that it's there. I'm going to bring this down so we've got somewhere to put magazines and stuff. And that's just a really fast way of me being able to just iterate using really simple shapes. You know, some kind of design. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's just a really useful tip that I've got. Let's say I wanted to do something more like this guy here. From this very simple sphere, I can create this chair, this egg chair. So I could go to, solid. I can put a sphere in, and I'm just going to create a sphere. And then what I'm going to do, same again. I'm just going to use one object, and I'm going to go hit Alt as I'm dragging it up. I'm going to move it out. I'm going to hit Alt as I'm dragging it down, and I'm going to then scale using Shift. And I'm going to move this to like the center until I'm happy, you know. And then I can start to scale this down to create the platform, the bottom of it, of this object. And then I'm going to teach you some commands. They're called Boolean commands. And the way that Boolean commands work is they take one object and they intersect it with another object. So, for example, in this instance, if I type Boolean difference, so Boolean difference, and it's going to say which is the object you want to subtract from. So I'm going to select my first sphere, and it says which is the object you want to subtract with. And then I'm going to select my second sphere, and then it's just going to subtract the second sphere away from the first sphere and leave me behind something like this. Same again here. I can do a Boolean union here. So the way that a union works is it joins two solid objects together. So I type Boolean union. I select the first object and the second object, and I hit enter, and now it's joined those two objects together. Okay? Now, if I start to add levels of detail, I can go, right, I'm going to put, I'm going to fillet this edge. So fillet edge, I'm going to do it at 4 millimeters, for example. I'm going to make sure chain edges is on. And we can start to put a fillet on this corner here. If it's struggling, then I might need to just change the amount just ever so slightly. Chain edges until it's happy with what I've done. Okay? So that's how I can use just basic solids, and I can Boolean them together. I can subtract them away from each other, I can add them together, or I can just build up different shapes into different objects. Okay? Your mind is your only limitation in that regard. Let me just very quickly show you how to do sub D. By the way, does everyone want to have a go at doing the solids? Has everyone just been able to play with the solids? Yeah, just have a little play. I think, like I say, this session's going to be recorded. So, you know, if you want to go through it, because I think it's really important. If I get through more of the content, you can go back through the recording, and then that way, you know, you can go at your own pace. I want to just quickly show you sub D. So if we had a sub D surface, the way that I create a sub D surface is I go to sub D at the top, and if I just do primitives and plane and just draw a plane here, I can just draw a plane out. If I hit tab, what it does is it creates my sub D. It subdivides the surface. If I hit tab again, it unsubdivides it. And what I'm going to do with this surface here, similar to my other commands that I've done, if I select an edge, and if I hold shift to select the other edge, so using the sub D tools, again, I can hold control, I can start to drag this guy out. and I can drag out a shape. But now if I hit tab, you'll see, because I'm using sub D, I get this more curved object, okay? So if I hit tab again, and I get this more curved object, what I can then do is start to select edges and push them and pull them to get sort of a more organic shape, okay? I can then just make sure my edges are turned on. I can select edges, hold shift. I can move this down. And then I can select another edge. I can push it backwards to get some curvature at the back. I can select this edge. I can push it backwards to get some curvature there. And I can start to create these more organic style objects using sub D. Okay? Yeah, so if I go to sub D, primitives, plane, I'm just going to draw a plane. Then I'm going to turn my edge filter on, just up here on my sub D tools. I'm going to turn my edge filter on, and I'm going to select the two front edges by holding shift, and I'm going to hit control, and I'm going to drag up. Then I'm going to hit control again, I'm going to drag backwards, and all the time it's dragging new faces out. And then I'm going to hit control again, I'm going to drag upwards, so I can create this type of shape. And then I can start to just choose the edges that I want to push and pull and the shape that I want. If I wanted, with this I could do a chair, but I could also say, okay, I'm going to do a range of chairs. I'm going to do a chair, and I'm also going to do a lounger, for example. So I can just use the same model. I can select the back edges and this edge, and I can start to push these back. Sorry. If I just select these, start to push these back, and I can do like a lounger, maybe like a garden lounger or something. And I can just start to play around and then create the same language. And then I can push edges as I select them. Yeah, and I'll show you how we can offset sub D. So I can scale. So let's say I want it like that. I can select these two edges, I can scale it out, and I can start to create some really interesting shapes using sub D. Okay? If I wanted to add some thickness to this now, what I could do is I'll just turn my filter off. I'm going to select the shape, and there's this offset sub D command here. I can either type it, or it's on my menu bar in the sub D tools, offset sub D. And I can then specify the distance that I want to offset this. Now let's say I want it to do it 10. Let me do it slightly bigger so you can actually see it. I'm going to do it 20. And then you'll see that it starts to offset this guy. I'll do it slightly bigger, 50. Make sure it's 50. There you go. And then I can start to offset this sub D. And then what I could do is I can then start to play around with the thickness of this and say, okay, well, in this area, I want it to be slightly thicker. I want it to thicken up in this area. So I'm going to push this backwards. Right? And in this area, I want it to also be slightly thicker, so it's got a different surface edge. I don't know why it's done that, but it has. And I can start to push these back. You know, and you can start to push and pull and manipulate these and create some really interesting furniture shapes. Okay? So that's how we use sub D. You can also use sub D objects like this one here. So I could bring in a sub D sphere, for example. And in a similar way, what I can do is I can choose the faces, and I can start to push and pull and manipulate this to then also create some kind of like chair effect, essentially. And I can just I'm just essentially just pushing and pulling. And then I can go to these guys here, and I can scale them in that direction. And I can start to create some interesting objects and chairs using sub D. Okay? That makes sense to everybody? Helpful? Perfect. Okay, curve from objects. So let's say that I've got a couple of these objects here. So let's just take this one here. And let's see if we can take, I'll take this guy here as well. I'll just take these two just so I can show you this. So curve from objects, I'm going to use a method called contour. So I'm going to isolate this object. I'm going to type isolate, press enter. And what I can do is, in the curve command, there's curve from objects. And what I can do is I can extract curves from this object. So I'll show you a couple of different ways that I could do this. So I can duplicate edges, I can do section, I can do intersection, I can get the wireframe, I can extract an isocurve. So I could do extract wireframe and select this, and I can select the entire wireframe. And then if I run a command called multi-pipe, for example, this is the sub D version of pipe, multi-pipe. And what it'll do is it'll put thickness around each of those curves. I can set the radius as like, the radius is set at 1 right now. So what I'll do is I'll just set the radius at 5, just so you can see it. And you'll see it's created like, it's created a pipe, but at the intersections, we have some of these more. Let me just do a bigger one than that. Just bear with me. So I went to curve from objects, and extract wireframe. Yep. So if I do multi-pipe, and you can do this with any object, and select the curves, I'm just going to do it slightly thicker just so you can see. And you see, I've created this like multi-pipe. And what I could then do is, if I wanted to, I could then go into these faces and I could start working into them and sort of pushing them and pulling them around, you know, however you want. So you can start to create really interesting shapes on there. You could bridge between them. So we could say, okay, if this is going to be where people sit or lie, let's just bridge across these guys here. So we can use the bridge command, and we can start to bridge across. And let's say we want to bridge across to this one. I'm just hitting enter all the time. And this is how we can start to create like more organic sort of shapes. Yeah, so we can start to create like more organic shapes with our furniture as well. Another thing that we could do with this from the curve extract, I'm just going to turn my filter off. If you find you can't select things, just turn your filter off, and then you'll be able to select things again. I'm going to do another curve from objects. This time I'm going to do contour. And with this, I need to select the objects that I want to do the contour lines on, press enter. I'm going to go in the front view and just move across. And I'm going to just contour in this direction. So I'm going to contour from left to right. Okay? Then it's going to ask for the distance. I'm just going to do, let's do 50. And it's going to do lines that cut all the way through my object like so. Yep. So now, if I extrude these lines that I've just created, but I do them in the direction, the same direction that I drew the lines, and I do it at 50, I can get this like parametric style bench. Yeah? So that's one way that you could do it. If I extrude them in that direction, again, and I do 50, and then I make sure it's solid, turn to yes, and do 50, press enter. it will solidify these objects. Okay? So now I could go to a laser cutter, I could get each of these objects, lay them flat, put them on a laser cutter, cut them out, and I've created a parametric chair. Okay? So that's how we can use the contour command. I'm just going to unisolate this. So this is curve from objects, okay? And I just wanted to show you that we can use geometry that we've already created. We can do curve from objects. And let's say we want to do our contour the other direction. We can also do the same the other direction. So again, I can go curve from objects. I can go to contour. This time I'm going to go in the front view, but I'm going to do it in the Z direction this time. Press enter. I'm going to type 50. And now I've got these contour lines. Now if I extrude these guys, extrude curve, type 50, solid yes, and you end up with something like that. Okay? So you can end up with like really interesting, shapes. You could laser cut this out. You could like remove certain parts of it if you want to. If you want to have, certain areas that are removed, and then that's how we can do that. Again, another thing that we could do is, let's say I'm going to create a sub D face, primitive, plane. I'm just going to create a face over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the control points on here. And I'm just going to select these 3 control points, each control point for the edges. I'm going to go up like this, right? I'm going to just bring this guy down. What I could then do is bring one of my cylinder tops, bring that over here, and copy it across. I could just stretch it out, bring this up. So this is like a glass top. This is a glass tabletop with a parametric curved bottom, for example. And then I could add thickness to this sub D that I've just created. So I can offset this sub D. And then I have something like that. If I wanted to do it as a parametric shape, I can do the same again. I can just copy it across. I can select the objects that I want to do the contour on. I can go in the front view. I can type contour. I'm going to choose the direction of the contour, which is going to be left to right. I'm going to set it as 50 again. And then I have these contour lines that I've created. I can then select those lines that I've created, and I can extrude curve again. I make sure the direction is correct. I'm going to go in the front view, and I'm just going to go this way. I'm going to type 50, and then you end up with some kind of like interesting parametric table. Okay? I'll let you have a play around. We have a few minutes, and I'll come around and help anybody that has any questions about that. Does that make sense to everybody? Is that helpful? So I want you to now just have a go, just for the last 10 minutes. Just have a quick turn at creating contour curves. So create a sub D, create some contour curves through it, try to extrude them, try to extract a wireframe, and do a multi-pipe. Okay? And I'll come around and help anybody that might be struggling. Yes?
I was wondering, is there a way that you can fillet straight up this corner? Because every time you fillet.
So because it's a surface, you won't be able to fillet that corner. You would have to add thickness to it in order to fillet the corner.
But what if I want to do like this?
Then you need to create the rectangle before you create the surface.
So I can't just fillet straight out.
You can't fillet.
Because I was trying to. You need to do it from the curve, right?
Yeah, so you'd either need to do it for a curve or a solid, because it only has a vertex there that it can reference.
I think, like say, I made this shirt and I forgot to fillet it before.
Got it.
And then I just don't know. I filleted it and then maybe just wire cut it or like what.
Yeah. So if you've done that, then if you turn it to sub D, you'll be able to put a bevel. You can bevel an edge. If you turn it to a sub D, you could bevel that edge and it will curve it.
And is there a way that you can say like manipulate the curvature of the sub D? So like there's a default, like there's a default sort of like degree. Is there a way that you can change it?
Well, a lot of it is by eye or dimensions, by specifying dimensions. In terms of degrees, unlike other surfaces in Rhino where you can specify degrees, with sub D, everything always has a curvature. So you need to kind of just understand the logic of how sub Ds work versus how a Rhino surface works. Because a surface, the way a NURB surface works is different than how a sub D surface works. And a Rhino NURB surface has degrees of curvature, whereas sub D, because it can flow continuously, it doesn't have to rely on those same mathematical parameters. It's less limited.
So is there like a sub D control point?
Yeah, so you can turn the control points on just by going here. So go to control points there.
But it's a different control point than
Yeah, it's different control points. And now just select a control point. Just make sure that the control points is enabled. Yeah. And now select just like a control point. Yeah. And now pull it. And now you move in a control point.
Is it possible to rebuild though? No.
To rebuild a sub D.
Yeah, then add more control points.
So if you want to add more control points, you'll need to insert more loops. So you can insert a loop, or you can subdivide it. So if you're subdividing it, you're adding more subdivisions, but because it's sub D, everything gets subdivided. Or you can add another loop, and the new loop will go in here. Does that make sense? So, and you can add loops up here. So you can click on loop just there. Yeah, that one. Insert edge loops. So select the middle edge, press enter, and now you can, drag a new one to the right, and now you can play with that one. Yeah? Guys, everyone been able to do that?
Not really. But
I understand that I went super fast at the end, but the reason is because I'd rather get it on the video for you, so you can go back over it, than us not get to it, and then it never exists.
So I kind of created this interesting shape. How
Yep.
do I put like a thickness to it? Like,
So you would need to use sub D, offset sub D, which is just this guy here, the one next to it. Yeah. Select it, hit enter, and then just whatever thickness you want, just type the thickness.
oh,
So type, I don't know, 50 mil, or let's just do 50 and hit enter, yeah. And then hit enter again. There you go.
wow, okay.
So now, because we didn't have solid selected, it's just offset the surface. If you want it to have thickness and be solid, what we would need to do is, Mac. We would need to do the same thing again.
So that was
So-
connected, yeah.
Keep going. So just run the command again. So you can either just select it up here, or you do offset sub D. Yeah. And then select the sub D you want to offset. Hit enter. And now you could do solid, make sure it's ticked. And now hit enter again.
The numbers?
Yeah, you specify the distance, hit enter again, and hit enter again. And then it'll give it thickness.
Nice. Thank you.
Yep.
And what was the wireframe part?
So extract wireframe was from the curve menu. So if you go to curve, go to extract wireframe, go to curve from objects. Yeah, and do extract wireframe. Yeah, and just select whatever objects you want to extract the wireframe from. This guy, yeah. Enter and just drag it across.
Wow.
And now do multi-pipe. Type multi-pipe.
Multi-pipe?
Yeah, and press enter.
Yeah.
And now give it a thickness of maybe like 5. So that's super thin right now. So maybe just do 50. Just type 50. Yeah, just in the radius. I hit enter.
Wow.
And I'll hit enter again. And then you've created like a multi-pipe around those curves. So now you can start to then push and pull these sub D shapes to create new shapes.
So the sub D thing, it works different from the normal.
Yeah, so NURB surfaces and sub D surfaces are very different. So sub D is subdivided surfaces that are more like polygons, and then when we hit tab, it then subdivides it into like a more organic shape. But I usually model in the non-organic shape, so I got an idea of the shape, and then when I hit tab, I can see then the organic version when it's subdivided.
So is there like a equivalent command for every sub D? So like, for example, offset. They have like a separate offset.
Yeah, so sub D has its own offset
Okay.
because sub D